Goodness.
Yeah.
About this stuff.
All right, we appear to be live on Zoom and live on YouTube, so we are ready to proceed.
Okay, we will call this meeting of the Rockbridge County Planning Commission to order, and we will begin with an introduction. Mr. Sladen has a new office member.
Yes, the office proud to announce Mr. Nick Meek has joined us with the Office of Community Development as a zoning technician. Started last week this time, so he's hit the ground running and helped out as far as this evening with some of the definitions of the zoning text amendments we're talking about later on. So
Very good.
welcome, Nick.
Thank you so much. Welcome. So now we'll have roll call. Commission Member Hennis here, Commission Member Kramer.
Here.
Commission Member Lucas.
Here.
Commission Member Whitmore.
Here.
Commission Member Watkins.
Here.
Great. In addition to citizens attending the meeting in person, citizens have several options to view or participate in the Zoom meeting webinar as described below. We will do our best to take citizen comment remotely. There are two options for citizens to offer comment. One, to join the Rockbridge County Planning Commission Zoom webinar. The link is available on the county website to copy into the address line on your browser. Two, to join by telephone, you may dial into one of the numbers listed on the county website. Webinar ID and password are there for your convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Planning Commission YouTube channel, also available on the county website. If you wish to make a citizen comment as a Zoom meeting participant, you will use the raise your hand feature. You can press raise hand button on the bottom of your Zoom window or press *9 if you're calling in by telephone. This time we are ready to proceed with the meeting. First order is citizen comments, and this would be anyone who is here to speak on something that is not on the agenda. Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
No one signed up. Recognize anyone now that'd like to make a citizen comment? With that, now is if you're online as an attendee, now is the appropriate time to use the raise the hand button if you'd like to make a citizen comment. Not seeing any hands raised, I'll turn the floor back over to the chair.
Okay, we are on to the approval of the May 10th, 2023 meeting minutes. Did we have any questions or corrections? Okay,
I make a motion to approve as submitted.
okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
And the motion passes and the minutes are approved as submitted. We're now on to the board reports. Staff has some reports for us.
Yes, at the May 22nd, 2023 meeting, the Board of Supervisors approved the Kingfisher rezoning as recommended by the Planning Commission. The Nelson rezoning, and excuse me, Kingfisher was associated with Route 11. The Nelson rezoning application associated with Wesley Chapel Road, that was approved as submitted, and the Shiflet application, rezoning application, was also approved as submitted. Shiflet's, of course, on 251 around Okie.
Okay.
Excuse me. And then the next board report I have is TCO. The TCO met last Wednesday, June 7th, and finalized some slight modifications to the True Hotel. Of course, we're excited. True Hotel has been, started construction. They're moving along fairly rapidly, in my opinion. With that being said, the TCO prior to construction had approved two different color schemes, not the traditional True color type prototype, but rather two different alternatives. And I guess corporate Hilton came back and wanted some slight modifications to one of those two. So it was well received.
Do we have any idea on when they plan to open or how long this construction is?
I do not.
Same
I
thing
don't.
with Starbucks.
Yeah,
or-
we get a lot of questions on the Wednesday
Yeah,
Starbucks.
I'm getting a lot
when
too, so-
Starbucks and Dunkin's on open. We don't know. We would anticipate those the Dunkin' and the Starbucks sometime in the spring. I would say next couple months. Of course, True.
Is
is
Chick-fil-A the one that's under construction across from True, or is that Dunkin'?
that is Dunkin'. So it's actually Dunkin' Donuts under construction, that you can see wooden frame. Then there's an unknown quick service restaurant that's associated with the Dunkin' parcel. Then there's a vacant parcel that the TCO board, as you know, has approved the Chick-fil-A plans, but that has not closed. It's my understanding that property has not closed as far as transfer of property.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the update. Next order of business, Samuel F. and Beth Rowe, 301 Sugarloaf Road, Stanton, Virginia, 24401, have an application for a zoning map amendment to conditionally rezone 2 parcels of land from general residential R1 zoning district to the general business B1 zoning district. This is a continued public hearing from the May 10th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. And we will begin with the staff and applicant presentations.
Yeah, and just for the record, I thought it'd be beneficial to briefly review essentially the same PowerPoint as last time with some slight modifications, obviously. With that being said, I'll be brief before turning it over to the Rows. This is, as discussed, is a conditional rezoning application. The property, little details of the property, considered 8 Hayes Creek Road, Brownsburg, Virginia, owned by Samuel F. and Beth Rao. Both are in attendance this evening. Tax map numbers 26-A-1-1 and 26-A-1-3A. Total between the two is 0.26 acres total per tax record. It's currently located in the general residential zoning district. Includes 1 single family dwelling on the property. Mr. and Mrs. Rao have made an application to conditionally rezone the 0.26 acres from the R1 district to the general business B1 district. The purpose of the rezoning is to provide for short-term whole house rental of the existing dwelling on the property. The conditional rezoning includes a proffer statement that limits the use of the property to a single family dwelling, a bed and breakfast homestay, a bed and breakfast inn, and or a tourist home. And a second proffer that states the bed and breakfast homestay, bed and breakfast inn, and or tourist home will be limited to the rental of 1 or 2 bedrooms. At the May meeting, the Planning Commission chose to continue the public hearing. Not sure why the TV just turned off. Continue the public hearing, essentially to allow more Planning Commission members to be present, which we're very excited to see everyone here, and that other members to revisit the property. With that, I'd like to turn the floor over to the applicants for any additional details they may provide or answer any questions that the board may have.
Welcome, Mr. Rao.
Hey, thank you. Good evening. My name is Sam Rao. My wife Beth and I wish to have the property at 8 Hayes Creek Road in Brownsburg rezoned with proffers to operate as a tourist home for whole house overnight stays. We are the owners of 8 Hayes Creek Road, also known as the Lucas House. We have worked diligently with Chris Slayton and Neil Whitmore of the rezoning office to make sure we follow the letter of the law in making this request. I would like to thank these men for their truthful and unbiased help during the process. I hope you and the county know that they are
Valuable.
My wife and I own a historic 1820 log farmhouse in Augusta County that we operate as an Airbnb as well. It has been part of the Virginia Historic Garden Week tour. We have been operating it for 6 years. The Lucas House, circa 1785, is unique as it is located in a mixed-use vicinity. The 2 properties to the south of us are zone business. They are the Sprint Chantel building and the old Brownsburg Bank building, owned by Dr. and Mrs. Arnold. The 2 properties adjacent to the Lucas House to the north and across Hayes Creek Road are also zone business. They are known as the Brownsburg Store and the Brownsburg Post Office. The store is currently undergoing extensive renovations by its owner, Bill McGough, to revive this once failing business or building. This property was rezoned in 2013 to business. With 6 proffers, they give the owners a broad array of choices to fulfill their vision. The options include a country store or a village business use, including a financial institution. 2, a library or a museum. 3, an open air or stand for farm, horticulture, craft, and produce sales. 4, a plant nursery with sale of products permitted on premises. 5, a bed and breakfast inn or a country inn. And 6, a restaurant or a cafe. It is a fact that this zoning that happened 10 years ago has some residents in an uproar because they can't do anything about it. I know that this has caused these residents to have emotions about our Lucas House request. Almost every letter of objection that I've read to the Lucas House proposal has negative mention of the store property as part of their content. The property located directly across Route 252 in is the Brownsburg Museum. Its listed owner is the Brownsburg Community Association. This property, to my surprise, is zoned residential. According to the Rockbridge County zoning documents, museums are allowed in general business zoning for section 605.02-36. As a new member of the Brownsburg Community Association, this leaves me with a sense of perplexity as why the association hasn't made compliance with the county. Lastly, the residents behind the Lucas House, 22 Hayes Creek Road, are Christina Lego and Jefferson Shingleton. They have campaigned heavily to oppose our request. Their zoning is a combination of both residential and agriculture. The land immediately adjoining our property and its subsequent lots 26A-A-3 and 26A-2-2, both containing an estimated of 2.693 acres, are both zoned residential. The portions of both are being utilized for high-density horse grazing, resulting in bare ground, high fecal production, which produces smells which can permeate the village. We at the Lucas House are lucky that our water is provided through the Brownsburg Water Company. If not, I would be worried by runoff from the horses housed in a residential neighborhood and knowing that they have an effect on other residents' water supply. Our septic system has also been a very large point of interest. Our septic system is an Advantex engineered private sewage treatment plant. It has been registered through the Department of Environmental Quality and the Virginia Department of Health. The zoning officials can attest to both the 2022 and the 2023 yearly inspections. Yes, the system alarmed a few Saturday nights ago due to the ultraviolet bulb burning out. The ultraviolet light kills any bacteria that may exist in the water leaving the system. I would like to thank Don Seishi for his call and alerting us to the situation. The maximum number of guests for overnight stays will be limited to 4. We have a semicircle drive with a tangent that easily accommodates up to 5 off-street parking spaces. There will be no pets, as our insurance carrier prohibits it. We will discourage small children due to the high porches and the stairwells in the house. We will always maintain the historical character of our property. It will still be our second home. We will entertain our friends in Brownsburg. We are not selling our house or going anywhere, no matter what our neighbors may think of our request. We live in a historical district that once contained businesses, had stores, taverns, blacksmith shops, and overnight lodging facilities to accommodate guests taking the stagecoach between Stanton and Lexington. The Lucas House has been used as a store for much of its 238 years. The guests that come to stay at the Lucas House will generate revenue for Rockbridge County. The stores, the mills, the wineries, the breweries, the horse center, museums, restaurants, and the store. My wife and I take good care of our property. We take care of the house and the yard. We have upheld the historical character of our property. We have no livestock trailers parked in our driveway, no junk cars or trash, or clutter on our porches. We keep our shrubbery trimmed. We have no barking dogs enclosed in pens. We had our property surveyed to make sure all buildings and vital necessities are located within the boundary lines. Brownsburg is a 200-plus-year-old community where families divided lots and deeded property to relatives. It's a complex puzzle. And the puzzle is not always what it seems. My wife and I appreciate your time. We're about to celebrate our first year as landowners in Brownsburg. We knew the basic zoning and the outlay before we purchased the Lucas house. Our perception of the community is pretty much what we expected. I'm sorry that some of our neighbors failed to have that same foresight. We ask that the zoning board act favorably on our request. We followed the law with this process. We've done our due diligence in a timely manner, and we ask that of you the same. I'll be glad to answer any questions anybody might have.
Thank you. Anybody have a question right off the top?
So how many nights a year or month, let's go with a month, do you foresee?
At our other Airbnb, we normally average about 8 to 10 nights a month. Wintertime, last fall season, 4, springtime, 4. But on an average, somewhere in the neighborhood, I would say on an average of 8 to 10 nights. Mostly the weekend.
And as someone that does turn at the 252 Hayes Creek multiple times a day, to his point, he does have a lot of probably some of the most off-street parking that you'll find in the community. So I will say that up front. Now, as far as the cabin in the back,
Cabin in the back has no utility really.
okay,
So it's just decoration. That's
Okay.
just the barn's put up. We had that barn, had that cabin brought here from East Tennessee.
Questions over here?
No.
Good.
I have a question, maybe Chris, maybe directed to you. So I think I read somewhere where they could have, because they're in R1, they could have asked for a special exception to do this Airbnb or.
In the existing residential zoning district, only a bed and breakfast homestay is permissible. A bed and breakfast homestay is the ability to rent 1 to 3 bedrooms, but it has to be owner occupied, meaning it's been determined that owner occupied, meaning that the owners have to reside on the property and be there during most of the renting activity.
Okay.
And that's essentially why we suggested, if you will, the second proffer, slight modifications, that the bed and breakfast homestay, bed and breakfast inn, and or tourist home will be limited to the rental of 1 or 2 bedrooms. So if it goes to a bed and breakfast homestay, someone would live there,
Mhm.
next owner, that type of thing, and could rent a room out under the
Right.
homestay.
Okay.
That
wanted
that
to
was the purpose
understand
of
that.
saying 1 or 2 bedrooms.
And do you have I guess, an overlay, a map where you can show us, because I wrote down what he said, 2 properties to the north of him are zone business, 2 properties to the south are zone business. The one behind is R1/ag.
Yes.
So. okay.
Well, would you like me to review the zoning in the area?
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a zoning map, included in the package.
Yeah.
With
got
that being said, it is fairly zoomed in, if you will. Let me go ahead and share my screen again, if you don't mind. All right, so as far as the zoning in the area, of course, this is Brownsburg, get everyone oriented. Coming out, if you can see my pointer here, this is Sterrett Road coming into Brownsburg. This would be 252 traveling north, 252 traveling south, and of course, Hayes Creek. Zooming down a little bit further, the zoning in the area is this, meaning that all the white in the area is zoned agricultural and general uses. The green to the west is agricultural and limited uses. The yellow is residential, general residential. And then zooming down a little bit further, this is conditionally rezoned business, and this was existing business essentially since the conception of zoning.
So that was essentially downtown Brownsburg back in, 150 years ago.
Absolutely, yes. The residential portion of Brownsburg would be the historic portion of Brownsburg. Absolutely.
Thank you. It just helps me get a better overview. Okay.
And one last question for Mr. Rao. The septic system, that is,
It's an engineered Advantex system that Mr. Barnes had put in 2019. I think.
Okay.
4 years old. He went to the nursing facility. Basically, it didn't get used until we bought the property a year ago. It has to be inspected every year and reported to the state, I believe. I know that we were unaware and the closing lawyers didn't pick it up that we needed to have the CEQ permit put in our name and the Department of Health transferred in the name. We had done the inspection, but properly in our name.
Transferred to your name, right?
It has been done.
okay,
Or it's been processed. The DEQ application has been there and it's been processed. And said it would take about 30 days for us to get a printed copy of the permit. And subsequently, you have to file with the Virginia Department of Health in Stanton. And we have already filed that with them and they're waiting on the paperwork from the DEQ in Mexico.
gotcha. So with that being said, this is a 4-bedroom house?
4-bedroom house.
Okay, so it's designed for a 4-bedroom,
It's designed for a 2-bedroom house.
designed for a 2-bedroom
So
house.
that's why we're limiting the proper for up to 2 bedrooms,
Okay, understood.
which basically that could mean 4 people in a regular household if you were living there full time.
Sure. So I guess that was going to be my next point. So 2-bedroom, 365 days a year is what.
That's what it's designed for, yeah.
Yeah. And we're talking, a few nights, a month. Okay. I just want to make sure
And the
that,
upstairs bedrooms are not needed for air conditioning. So, and one room, like a lot of old houses, 1 bedroom you have to access to another bedroom, which is awkward if you're going to have someone.
But a
staying.
semi-private, yeah. Yeah.
But both of the main bedrooms, or the larger bedrooms, have ensuite bathrooms. Okay.
There are 2 bathrooms.
Oh, yes.
So 2 bedrooms, 2
Yes,
bathrooms. Okay.
The large bedroom downstairs and the large bedroom upstairs each have ensuite.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? All right, so at this time, we're going to open the public hearing. So reminder, when you come forward, if you will give your name and magisterial district, you will be limited to 3 minutes. And obviously, if somebody has already said what you plan to say, you can just say, I'm just reiterating, and you can handle that in that way. Do we have anyone here physically present that would like to speak that has signed up?
Yes, first on the list is Colleen Cosgriff.
Okay.
Hi, Mr. Sladen, Mr. Lucas, and Mr. Whitmore, Ms. Hennis, Mr. Kramer, Mr. Hawkins, Mr. Whitmore. I am Colleen Cosgrove, and I represent the Brownsburg Community Association. The Brownsburg Community Association thanks you for your reconsideration of the conditional rezoning applications that have been submitted by Dr. and Mrs. Rao for the Lucas House. This delay has given us a chance to speak to many of our community members and establish a plan for how to proceed as we consider our mission statement, which is that we are to promote a sense of community spirit in the Brownsburg area by protecting, enhancing, and preserving the quality of life. This rezoning topic has become a serious issue in the village, and we understand that time is an issue considering the upcoming comprehensive plan. We've heard many differing opinions about the Lucas House application and potential future zoning changes. Some neighbors really want to weigh in, but are also concerned about keeping their name out of the public eye. We understand that there are many issues at play here as we're a historic rural village with agricultural surroundings and people who have a vested interest in how the village would look in the future. That being said, we request an opportunity to gather feedback about future zoning in our village within the next month from our 300+ community members using the following 3-step process. We first would like to do a question answer session. We will gather the questions in advance anonymously from our community members by email and a lockbox at our post office. We will put our requests out for questions about the current and future zoning applications and the comprehensive plan. We will ask our community to present questions to Chris Layden through an online meeting so that we can record and share the information with our community members. Second, we will anonymously survey our BCA members based on what information everyone learns about the current and future zoning and comprehensive plan. We will anonymously survey our members. We will allow for further questioning. We will ask our members, but we'll also break down the data so that we can see what the Brownsburg residents really want to say about their quality of life and the future of the village. Finally, we wish to form a special committee based on that data that we collect and the questions that we gather from the survey. We'll form a special committee that will be comprised of at least one board member, but many Brownsburg residents and consultants that will allow us to finally to research based on the questions gathered. The committee will then present that data to you. So we appreciate your consideration and we look forward to sharing what our community has to say.
Thank you.
Next up is Kim Wellybeer.
Philippa.
Good evening. I'm Kim Welliver. I'm a neighbor of Dr. Rao's Airbnb in Arbor Hill, Virginia, which is basically halfway between Stanton and Middleborough. I've lived there full time since 2003. And I can tell you that when he bought the property about 6 years ago and started using it as Airbnb, he has improved the property both in landscaping, and he put up a barn, and the property is always neat, and at no time have any of the guests or visitors with the guests caused any undue commotion or problem in the community. Arbor Hill Road is only 4.5 miles long. There are very few houses along the road, so it's very remote. I think that he probably goes above and beyond what most people who have an Airbnb would do. He meets most of the clients, not every single one, because some of them are repeat customers. But all the others, the new people he's not met before, he usually meets them. He's very discerning and very concerned. Although he doesn't live along Arbor Hill Road, he actually lives about a mile away. So I appreciate the opportunity to at least give you an insight into how things are done with his Airbnb now.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming in.
Next up is Chris Lego.
Good evening. The first thing I need to say is that our concern about this property has nothing to do with Bill McGough, who has been working diligently to rehab another building across the road as an Airbnb. And our only connection to that at all, we admire him and his work. Our only connection to that at all is that we feel like that's enough, that one, and we don't need one right across Hayes Creek Road. When I spoke at the May 22nd meeting, I described how this tiny property is and the neighborhood concern that since how tiny this property is and the neighborhood concern that since guests would find no joy in this backyard, they will, quote, take a walk through Brownsburg. Since then, I've had a further confirmation of the potential invasion of privacy on the backyards in this neighborhood. I was chatting with a woman who was on the team to organize the recent house and garden tour in Brownsburg. She said, at first, we were going to let folks just drive and park in the village and find the places on their own. But when I went and walked in this neighborhood, I said, no way would this work. It's all private yards and private driveways. So they had all the visitors come to the mill and park and then get on buses to Brownsburg. And they had guides all over the place directing people to each house on the tour. And they had highway departments on the big roads so that that people would be walking that day on those roads because 252 is dangerous, which is another concern for unsuspecting visitors. By the way, this tour was wonderful. It was a great success and a great way to share the history of Brownsburg while respecting the privacy of people who live in there. Since the last year, I've also learned a little more about the engineered sewage treatment system that takes up a substantial part of this little backyard. There's an area that puzzled me. It looks like an empty garden bed, but it lies between two pipes that are part of this septic system. When I called the company who built the system, a representative said, that is a constructed wetland. He said that this 6-foot by 20-foot area is a lined bed of soil that partially treated sewage travels through before it's pumped into the 30-foot open stream, the one with the warning sign about the dangers of this effluent. He said if a child stepped into that wetland, they would soon sink in. By the way, if you did go out to see the property, that all may have looked very dry. That's because this system has seen close to no use in the past 3 years, and most definitely no use at the level of 4 people, which is what he's asking for. Again, it's a bad idea to invite innocent guests seeking a stay in the, is that me?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Next up is Jeff Shingletons. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, first of all, thank you all for your service. I've thanked the 3 that were here last time, and I want to thank the 2 that are now here. It's, I know, not a thankful job all the time, and I appreciate you guys, putting the time in and taking it seriously. So my name is Jeff Shingleton. I live at 22 Hayes Creek Road in Brownsburg. That's behind the Lucas house. When we bought our house 2 years ago, we were so impressed with the quiet nature of the village community combined with so much friendliness. And now, facing this potential zoning change right on our corner, we are again impressed, this time with the support that our neighbors here are providing to this planning commission to preserve this quiet residential community. Please deny the B1 zoning to the Lucas house. As one neighbor wrote to you, there are only around 20 houses in Brownsburg, and every one lost to business zoning is one more residence lost. Dee Pappett, another neighbor who's not able to be here tonight, made some important points at the last meeting that open up another important perspective too. The Rouse bought the Lucas house as a residence with an R1 zoning. They, like us, were welcomed warmly into the village community. So neighbors were surprised when nearly 6 months after they began to work on the place and move furniture in, they filed a request for the zoning change. This is when and how the neighbors learned that it was not their intention to live here or even keep the place as a retreat like a few others do. As Dee pointed out, the Rouse have another Airbnb, and they knew that they would need a zoning change in order to make this place a guest rental. It would have been better for them and for the community if they had made an effort to assess how the neighbors might feel about another short-term guest house in the village before they bought the Lucas house. They should also have investigated how the engineered sewage system at the Lucas house works so that they could have learned about the limitations of the system before they bought the property. This might have helped them make a decision. These limitations include a constructed wetland that Chris just described, and an open stream of effluent with a warning sign indicating that there's non-potable water in that tiny backyard. And they would have learned that the system was designed for 2 bedrooms and not for the 3 that they asked for in the original proffer. So there could have been some work that would have helped to prepare them to make a decision. And the fact is that changes in the zoning in any property in Brownsburg have to be carefully evaluated because the septic systems are old. There have been several failures of septic systems in the area, and we don't want another one of those. So please, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Next up is Mike Smith. Mike, oh, thank
Oh,
My name is Mike Smith and I live in Brownsburg, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight about this issue. The request for a variance to the residential zoning in Brownsburg reminds me of the saying, "Don't let the camel get its nose under your tent." Camel herders no doubt know that once the camel got its nose under the tent, its whole body would follow and the tent uprooted and possibly destroyed. I am concerned about what would come next if the variance is approved and the camel's nose is allowed under the tent. Whether someone is living in Brownsburg or considering purchasing property there for non-residential use, if this request is approved, one could justifiably cite this previous approval for their own variance request. After all, if one set of owners were granted a variance, why not others wanting to take advantage of the same opportunity? How easy will it be to say yes to this variance and deny others? If change through variance becomes the recommended policy, the unique and desirable qualities of this historic community could be lost in the process. Residential zoning seems to work well for this residential community. It has worked for years for its intended purpose, to make Brownsburg a desirable place to live for those in the community. For that reason, I request the variance request not be approved. Regardless of the outcome of this meeting, people will have different opinions about this issue as we participate in this democratic process. Let's respect the opinions of our neighbors in attendance whose opinions are different from our own, and any decision made by the commission. Let's also learn from the past and participate in this democratic process without allowing the community to be divided again. Thank you.
thank you.
That is everyone signed up.
Okay, do we have anybody else that would like to speak at this time?
We check online. If anyone would like to raise their hand and make a public comment on the application, now's the time to do so. Not seeing any. I will turn the floor back over to the chair.
Okay, with no further comments, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board.
I would like to make one comment. As you know, we don't read letters anymore with COVID. During COVID times, we read the letters that we received. We discontinued doing that since we all could be in the same room, but would, just like last time, I would recognize that we had a Ms. Keys and Ms. Earhart write letters that we of course emailed to you all directly. So I would like to
Thank you.
acknowledge those.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any questions, discussion up here?
Just a clarification from the lady who represented the community association. I was unclear if she was asking for further time for the community, for your talking to the community members.
If you could come up and speak at the microphone. The reason this is Zoom.
Yes, we were requesting more time because we had an influx of neighbors, residents come to us, come to me, asking the BCA to assist in this process of, I think, trying to establish what does our community want, and based on some incidents in the past, some people were afraid to speak up. And so we wanted to offer a way for our community members to voice their concerns and questions about this zoning application or the future zoning changes that might occur with the comprehensive plan. And so that's why we were trying to come up with a fair way for people, especially in our community association with an interest in Brownsburg, but those living in the Brownsburg community, to speak up and find out the information they needed, which is why we asked Chris to host the question and answer session. But we wanted to find out what their questions were based on what we learned, and then get that data and find out what more do they want to know, what do they want for the future of our village, because it is such a unique place, being a rural historic village.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And one last question for you. Do you not see this has been a benefit to the museum?
I do see you talking about the short-term rental.
Yeah.
Yes, I do see that as being a benefit to the museum. But with this zoning request coming, with this zoning application coming in, there are other people who are interested in considering putting in a zoning application as well. And it just sort of other neighbors then, and I live right outside, my house is in the historic district, but I live right outside of Brownsburg. There are many people who just want to speak about this and put their opinions out there. And that's really hard to do when there's so many differing opinions.
Mhm.
So we simply wanted to find out what the residents want and find a way to share that and let people ask the questions that they want. And we know that would take time.
So it's my understanding, I mean, this has been advertised for 2 months anyway, right? I mean, it's been out there for 60 days. We've gotten letters from people, their name's not out there in the public. They've written letters with, so there's plenty of ways that people could be in touch with us. I think these are the first couple letters we've gotten about it. We didn't really get much before last meeting. Am I correct?
We did
on
get,
that?
I believe it was 8 total letters last meeting. I was somewhere around that number.
Okay, so I mean, we've had a lot of input from people. I think, that's why we advertise it in the paper. So just so they know, and everybody knows, we're not putting your name out there for the world to see, but it does come to us in an email, and we do read all those. So, okay, thank you. Anything else before we let her go back? Okay. Any other questions or comments at this time? Hold on one second. Let us talk here. And if we need you to come back up, because I know I want to address some things that came up. I don't know if you guys have anything else. I'm going to let you guys, do you have something?
Hearing's still open.
No, public hearing has been closed.
And I went and visited the property. There's enough room for, I got a full-size four-door truck. There's enough room for 5 vehicles plus to park. That was one of my main concerns. That's one of the reasons I made a motion to kick this thing down to another month and leave a public hearing on it, because I knew the property, but I knew the property, but I didn't know the property close enough or well enough to say yes or no. But I was more than impressed with the parking from what I saw compared to what I see on a overhead. The last meeting, I asked about that because the septic system is behind the loop, the gravel road. And I believe, Mr. Rowley, you said that there will only be 2 or 3 cars parked back there because you can't compress the septic field.
The driveway is completely different from anything.
They're not driving near that.
Mm-mm.
If you
No,
could
no,
come up,
I know, that's what we
Speak in the
talked about
microphone,
last
please.
time.
Sorry.
That's what we talked about last time, that the parking was going to be on the driveway, that they weren't going to park in the yard.
That was correct.
Right, okay.
There's enough room for 5 full-size pickup trucks, plus probably a compact car to park in that driveway, not on the grass.
If you're only looking at 4 total people, they're probably not all driving their own car, but I guess they
That was
could.
one of the concerns that got brought up in the last meeting, was parking. And I feel like it's out.
And I do have a question for you, going back to the septic. I mean, I think engineered septics, they're the most regulated. There are so many tests, there are so many things that are going on, way more than just a regular septic field out there. So I feel much more comfortable with an engineered septic system that I know is getting inspected every year. But this is the first I've heard about this open, soft, whatever. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to speak to
It's
that.
an evaporation type situation, but it has mulch and plants in it, and you can walk.
You're not going to sink down in it.
You're
If
not
you
gonna
step on it,
sink
we don't have to
down
worry
in it.
about
No
kids
dog
or,
or child is going to disappear in Brownsburg in my
Right.
septic system.
okay,
There is a pipe that comes out, and there is a sign that says the effluent is not potable, which
Right.
means the clear water that comes out and does maybe go in the ditch
Mm.
is not for drinking, but it's also been processed by the ultraviolet light, and it looks just like running water.
okay.
And there is no smell. And again, it was engineered, licensed, and inspected with the Department of Environmental Quality and with the Virginia Department of Health.
Yeah, I know they're highly regulated, so
So,
thank you.
I mean, as far as some other septic systems maybe in the village,
Right. Mhm.
probably better than most.
Thank you. Thank you. One of my other concerns is I hear this, we don't want people walking down the street. We're worried somebody's going to walk down the street that comes to visit. I mean, that's what we want, right? We want people,
There
to
is a
come and see
walking
your-
tour brochure
yeah.
that the museum and the community puts out.
Mm.
I put out a letter when we very first started this so that all of the neighbors had my telephone number, and I invited them all to come and visit. See what we've done with Mr. Barnes's house? No. Let us tell them what our vision is.
Mhm.
Not one person has come. Not one person has called to ask questions.
thank you.
And as far as the Brownsburg Community Association, they own the museum, but they haven't complied with their zoning
Right.
compliance. And they have had every right to call me, have an open house at the house to see what's going on. Not one word. So, and as far as the people who want to say something and are afraid to, they can send a letter.
Right.
And they've had 2 months to do it. And, you know, everybody's talking about a comprehensive plan. Have I missed something?
I can address that. So we're obviously last couple months, probably last 6 months or so, we've been going chapter by chapter on the comprehensive plan update. What we haven't got to, and what usually is most interactive with the community, is the land use chapter, of course. And so we've essentially been doing them in order. And land use chapter one, it's time consuming. All the other ones are time consuming, but there's more community input on that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time. If you can sit back down, we will see if we have any other questions. We'll bring it back. But, you know, the other thing I heard was we're okay with this person doing an Airbnb. He's doing a good job, but we don't want this guy to do it. And that kind of gets into what the last comments were about. Well, how can you tell one person it's okay and this person it's not okay? You know, this guy's property is located in between 4 other properties that are zoned business. right there in that little area. On either side of him, he's got his own business. The one across the street, that's going to be an Airbnb. Apparently could be lots of things that would definitely impact the village, depending on what they choose to do with that. But I think that's interesting. So
One thing, they're looking at 4 people in this house, 10, is Sean mentioned.
10 days.
4 people, 10 days a month on average. And somebody could buy that place and worried about the engineered septic system, can buy and move a family of how many in there, fill the place up, 6 kids and 2 adults, if that's what they want to do, and feel like it, like where they like to live, and use that septic system.
Right.
If they wanted to. And so I think the septic system to me is one of the least of my worries, or if I was anybody
I was gonna
around,
say that. I agree with that.
it's covered the bases pretty well. But yeah, I'm,
All right.
I have a few staff comments just on the time frame. Just for the public's information, the planning commission legally has 60 days to act on the application, essentially from the date of the last meeting. That date falls in, I think it was July 9th. That date of 60 days falls in prior to y'all's next planning commission. Of course, you know, there has been some situations where we've done an extension by agreement. Not sure that's needed in this case, but did want to chat about the time frame that y'all are legally required. If y'all don't act on the application, it's deemed to be approved and recommended to be approved and sent to the Board of Supervisors. Second thing, some clarifications, just some updates, clarifications. This is a rezoning request, and more particularly, it's a conditional rezoning request that would go to the Planning Commission has an advisory role, and y'all would be making a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. So I wanted to point out that this is not a variance process. Variance process would go directly to the BZA Board of Zoning Appeals. And that's essentially the 2 comments I have.
Okay. All right. Do we want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, read the motion, please.
I'll second.
But it would be proper to read the full motion.
I asked him
that's what we're
to.
gonna
He's
do.
going to take care of it.
All right. I make a motion to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the conditional rezoning, wrong one here. It's here. Make a motion to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the conditional rezoning of 0.26 acres located on the southwest side of the intersection of Brownsburg Turnpike and Hayes Creek Road, Route 724, identified as tax map number 26A-1-1 and 26A-1-3A from the general residential R1 zoning district to the general business B1 zoning district.
Just say, it should say be approved. I got
Be
the width.
approved with acceptance of the proposed proffers.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. All in favor? Aye. And the motion passes. We will recommend to the Board of Supervisors
Do we
approval.
need to read the proffers?
I don't think so. Do we need to read those proffers?
No,
into the
that they're
record?
included in the package. There's 2 proffers. It was reviewed during the presentation, so I think that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
If
Thank
you
you.
would like to take a 2-minute recess, if y'all
Yep.
more welcome to stay, obviously, but if y'all want to, if anyone wants to leave, now's
Yep,
could be
we'll take a
appropriate.
2-minute recess for now.
I picked up truck, I pulled it in there and I parked it, and I stood there and I looked at it. And then well, if you did, I'd be like circle it, in there.
That will be
You can put 5 of them in there. Second. Or.
26. 26. Meeting starts at 5:30. Public hearing. 26.
Saturated. Smell something. Do I have to do it?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I'll recognize that.
This is, you All right. Yeah, she insinuated that. She was clear. Yeah. At least it's half as many. Just the next one.
PowerPoint. I don't have a PowerPoint for that, but we'll get to it.
That one doesn't have quite the same turnout. Yeah.
You know, it's a. All the verbatim text. Oh, no, hold on, that's it. Yeah. Couple, yeah, obviously unique part, but the purpose of the application. All right.
Ready to roll?
Yes, I think we are ready. Yes.
We're gonna bring our meeting back to order and proceed with Mountain Valley Rentals C LLC, 1317 Woodland Avenue, Buena Vista, Virginia, 24416, application for a zoning map amendment to conditionally rezone 3 parcels of land from the general residential R1 zoning district to the general business B1 zoning district. We have an application presentation from the staff.
Yes. So I'm going to utilize the package essentially. This is a conditional rezoning that has been made by Mountain Valley Rentals C LLC. In attendance tonight, we have the owner of the LLC, managing member of the LLC, Mr. Everett Beverly, and his daughter, Audrey Beverly. With that, the property is located at 679 Long Hollow Road, Buena Vista, Virginia. Again, owned by Mountain Valley Rentals C LLC, identified as we're rezoning, conditionally rezoning 3 parcels of land. All are highlighted here in orange on the screen. They are further identified as 77-A-1-16A that consists of 0.727 acres per tax records, and then 77-13-1D and 7713-X1. Both the D1 and X1 parcels together total a 1.24 acres per tax record. So the total of the entire rezoning application is 1.967 acres per tax records. Currently located in the general residential zoning district, and there's 1 single family on the property. So to get everyone oriented, this is Long Hollow Road, traveling north towards Middle Road to the landfill area, if you will, and then traveling south back to the city of Buena Vista there. Of course, you can see on the map, all the yellow is zoned residential, and then we do have some business zone here that also Mountain Valley Rentals C LLC owns. Get everyone sort of further oriented. This is Pinky Store. That's ironically enough zoned, some of it's zoned business, but the store itself is zoned residential. That recently transferred owners, and we've gotten a rezoning application that probably will be coming y'all's way next month for the cross the road. Again, there's 1 single family dwelling on the property. Mr. Beverly has made an application on behalf of the LLC to conditionally rezone again, the 1.967 acres from the general residential zoning district to conditionally rezone to the general business B1 district. The purpose of the rezoning is to provide for a short-term whole house rental of the existing dwelling, again, identified as 679 Long Hollow Road. The conditional rezoning includes a proffer statement for Mr. Beverly that limits the use of the property to a single family dwelling, a bed and breakfast homestay, a bed and breakfast inn, and or a tourist home. With that being said, I would like to turn the floor over to Miss Andrea Beverly to review details of the project and answer any questions that the Planning Commission may have.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Audrey Cormer. Beverly is my maiden name. It's okay. Everett is my father. I'm like his little assistant. So we have a proper statement from him, and then I'd like to just to kind of introduce who we are, or who he is, basically. So to the Rockbridge County Zoning Board, the Board of Supervisors, and to all concerned parties. My dad, Everett Beverly, representing Mountain Valley Rentals C LLC. He is a lifetime local resident in the city of Buena Vista, operating a landscaping business, Mowing and More INC, for 20 plus years, as well as 2 rental companies, Mountain Valley Rentals B LLC, which owns Buena Vista property, Mountain Valley Rentals C LLC that owns county property. The Mountain Valley Rental Companies B and C own multiple long-term residential and commercial properties in and around Rockbridge County, including in Buena Vista, Virginia. One property is 679 Long Hollow Road, Buena Vista, Virginia. I'd like you all to consider rezoning from residential to business. Our goal is to provide local college families and friends, tourists and adventure seekers an affordable short-term rental option that is conveniently located while also providing privacy to our guests as well as our neighbors. This will be a whole house rental option without food provided as part of the accommodation. Mountain Valley Rentals C LLC purchased this property last fall and has done a great job removing dangerous trees from around the cabin structure, maintaining the gravel driveway and landscaping, as well as remodeling and updating the interior for aesthetics. Stays at this cute cabin would be limited to no more than 6 guests. There is adequate off-street parking and should not affect our neighbors' parking. We value our neighbors' peace at home. We have peace at home as well, and we value that. And we'll continue to work with them, gathering feedback to help us have the use of this property to provide lodging for family and friends of local students and travelers. Use of the property will most likely be on weekends with some sporadic weekday usage. This home is served by a well and septic system maintained by Mountain Valley Rentals C LLC. As our community and schools continue to develop and evolve, we hope that you consider rezoning this property for the benefit of the evolving communities, families, friends, which will provide another option of simple living beyond the surrounding hotels and motels. Thank you so much for your time. So that is a little bit about us and a little bit about our background. In total, there's somewhere around 80 properties between the 2 rental companies, and they're all long-term. And we really wanted to try to help. So Southern Virginia University in Buena Vista, that's really, really developing our downtown Buena Vista area. We really appreciate that. Mountain Gateway Community College has also come to Buena Vista. We have VMI and WNL always, here, the Horse Center. This property on Long Hollow Road is very conveniently located, but also private. And if you look at the actual single family dwelling on that map, it butts up against property that is already owned by Mountain Valley Rentals C and is considered commercial. It used to be a barber shop, if I'm not mistaken. What was his name? Yeah, Stone lost me, but I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. But we already own commercial property in the front that actually sits on Long Hollow. We have a great rapport with our neighbors. They really appreciate, how when we bought the property, that we just really took it over, getting right, dangerous trees. It is currently rented as a long-term rental right now because this process takes a little time, and we really didn't know if it was going to go, so we rented it long-term. But if it ever flipped back to short-term, or if it ever came vacant, which it will, because they do. We go in and do our thing. But, we was hoping to also be able to provide the college families for graduation or homecoming or even our tourists. We have the Appalachian Trail. We have a lot of amenities and a lot of great things. I am also a realtor in this area, and people are moving here from all over. They're moving here. They're coming to stay here. They are coming for these Blue Ridge Mountains, and they're coming for peace, and they're coming from all over the United States to buy property here. And some are actually just coming to visit. I live in Rockbridge County myself, and I appreciate downtown Lexington. I send everybody, I think it's beautiful. I think it's well kept. And I understand Buena Vista is going that way as well. So I'm just really excited to help some of the people come see what we have to offer and not have to pay hotel prices or worry about running down the hallway with children, because I have a 5-year-old and those things are important.
Thank you. You guys have any questions?
So the three parcels, the one to the south has the cabin on it, and then the other two, what are the goals for the other two?
So the other two happen to be, so Mountain Valley Rentals already owned the other two. They came with the business zone in the front that was the barber shop, and they came with that property. And so this property that he bought, or Mountain Valley bought, actually has an encroachment on those other two parcels. And so, or, that one parcel. And so that's why we said we almost have to do it all as business when we didn't need it all, but there's such an encroachment, and Mountain Valley owns it all now. So that was the purpose behind it. The original application only came in for 679. It was, but as far as the encroachment, it almost, we had to.
And you couldn't
So
build.
I can show you that. So this 679 is located here, and there's a more detailed plat of record, and it has an encroachment from 16A to 1D. Some of this back porch, I think it is actually on 1D. And so, as explained, the original application was only for the unique acreage associated with 16A. But looking at the application, looking at the surveying plat, it would have been problematic to rezone just 16A, have a house for short-term rental, and have half of, not half of it, but some of the house in a residential zone used for short-term rental. Whole house short-term rental.
So if we do all of this as B1, is there a potential that other homes could be built on that?
Yes, I mean yeah, absolutely. It could be done with residential as well. Yes.
Even though it doesn't have to have 2 acres, even though it's on a septic and well, so.
It's a
in the county, don't
residential
you?
zoning district. So residential zoning district knocks it down to a 1 acre lot size.
Okay.
However, that would be for any new parcels of land. So for example, all of these vacant pieces of land, are well less than 1 acre, they're probably less than a
Right.
half acre. But those would be buildable parcels because they're existing tax map numbers. If they can meet setbacks, drain field, health department
But
standards.
if we're putting these in B1, basically you could build one other house here based on
I believe
the
you
fact that there's 1.96 acres and.
theoretically you could build 2 because there's 2 different vacant parcels.
Okay.
So for example, I always allude to we commonly say it's a 2 acre lot size and you have to have 2 acres to build on, but that's not a correct statement. It's a 2 acre lot size. So any new parcels of land are required to be 2 acres. So we have a lot of lots out there that are less than 2 acres that are buildable. Again, if you can get a well
right.
drain field, and I always equate that to, let's say the board of supervisors in 40 years in the future, say we want to go to a 10 acre lot size or something greater than 2. Of course, all the existing
ones
lots
that are
would
2
be
acres.
buildable.
So how big is that X1 lot?
X1, I can tell you per, and we have it in here well, the total between those two were,
1.24.
yeah, 1.24. So bear with me here. I'll tell you exactly. In fact, I can tell you exactly per the plat of what it is, but and I have the plat in the folder, of course, but per GIS, and again, we have it in here correctly.
I think you get where I'm going with this is, if you can build 2 more houses, is that 2 more short-term rentals that we're going to allow there? Because by the time if you zone it business, then it's about right.
Once we zone it business,
It's about right. Yeah.
What's the access to the house?
Yeah, that would be the kicker. So that to answer your question directly, that one's less than a 1/4 acre. Of course, boundary line adjustments are done, but
Mhm.
if they would utilize the same access, it would have to be a low volume commercial entrance.
And is that entrance through the B1 property that they already own there?
No, it's south of the B1 property.
So how do you access these properties?
That is from between, if you see 673 and 683, Mountain Valley
Yeah,
Rental C owns that piece of property.
in the middle,
Yes.
that's vacant. 77A 116 or 77A 115A, is that the access?
16.
Okay, I was gonna say, because 683 also encroaches on 77A, 115A, so.
And we have done significant with the recent surveys that were done, we have done significant changes to the mapping of the area. But let me see.
Everything else here is residential.
So that gentleman owns, it's my understanding that he owns 15 and 15A. There is an encroachment, but he owns both of them.
Okay,
Is my understanding.
okay.
That is correct.
And everything else here is zoned residential. All the
Ex-
yellow.
Yes, the yellow on the map's residential, B on the map is business.
How big is the 77-26-1, the parcel to the northwest of these? Was there a structure or a house on that one?
77-26-1. That is a 15-acre parcel, 15.184 acre parcel, and there are no improvements on that parcel. That is owned by another adjoiner that has multiple parcels in the area, and they do live in there.
Everything for me. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. If we have other questions, we will call you back. So at this time, we're going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone physically present who would like to speak?
There's no one physically present, or no one signed up. Anybody like to speak?
And
So
computer or
now-
phone?
No one has their hands raised. With
Okay.
that, let me check one more thing. Yes, I'll turn the floor back over to Chair.
No further comment. We will close the public hearing and bring it to the board for any questions, comments. Pretty straightforward to me. Okay. Go for it. Whose turn? Go ahead.
Okay. I make a motion to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the additional rezoning of 1.967 acres per the tax records on the west side of Long Hollow Road, Route 631, identified as tax map numbers 77A-1-16A, 77-13-1D, and 77-13-X1 from the general residential R1 zoning district to the general business B1 zoning district be approved with the acceptance of the proffers.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor? Aye. The motion passes, and we will recommend to the Board of Supervisors the conditional rezoning. Thank you for coming in. Okay, we are now on to item 7, comprehensive plan update discussion.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we are on to chapter 8, community facilities. And this chapter is a little bit different than what we've been doing so far in this process, in that this specific chapter is so comprehensive and includes so many different utilities that are in the community that it takes more time contacting people and companies. And so during this month, we have not been able to fully update it, but you'll see the portions that are updated in gray have been updated. I'm sorry, the portions that are highlighted in gray have been updated. So the rest of the information that is not highlighted will be addressed essentially in the coming month and updated hopefully by the next meeting in July. So starting on the first page, you can see electric power has not quite been addressed as of yet, and natural gas in the area. But starting on the third page of it, we get to parks, recreation and outdoor facilities. This portion has been mostly updated. The developed recreation areas within the county is still to come. but the natural environment areas within the county have been fully updated. We do have some additions to make to this natural environment areas, which will be addressed in the coming month as well. Suggestions from committee as well as commission members and outside members. So those will be addressed in the coming month. Rockbridge County School Facilities, their information has been completely updated, as well as the map. Law enforcement within the county as well as the cities has been updated. And emergency services has also been updated, including the rescue squad and fire department maps. As we get to human services, you'll see that this is an area that we are still looking for the updates on. Broadband initiatives in the county have been updated, as well as solid waste management. And then wastewater supply and wastewater disposal, we have received the update but have not quite been able to get through it. So that will be done in the coming month. So then we get to the community facility goals. So just real quick, I'll go over the goals that are listed. And we can talk about changes that you feel need to be made. So the one goal that's listed is to promote the efficient use of county resources. Objective number 1 is to conserve and enhance the natural recreational resources that provide the foundation of the county's retirement, recreation, and tourist-based economic sectors, and continue to improve the recreational facilities with emphasis on balancing recreational improvements and opportunities over the entire county for all age groups. Second objective is to recognize the fundamental importance of education and contributing to the health and vitality of the county by providing an equal and quality education to every school-age child in the county. Objective number 3 is to maintain quality law enforcement in the county. Number 4, to ensure a safe and crime-free environment. Number 5 is to develop a fire and EMS system that meets the needs of the citizens of the county using a combination of volunteer and career fire and EMS agencies in the county. Increase the efficiency of the current landfill and trash collection system through an economically feasible and environmentally sound solid waste management program. Meet state mandates for reducing the waste stream. Provide adequate water and sewer facilities in selected areas of the county to meet existing and future needs, improve the quality of life, and maintain clean and healthy environment. And finally, maintain a wide range of human services in the county to meet the needs of all county residents. So with that brief overview, again, we are looking to hopefully complete the update by next month's meeting in July, contacting additional agencies to get that information. Does anyone have any questions or suggestions, recommendations?
No. Good.
Thank you.
It's a lot of work. Okay. Is there anything we need to do with that, or that will just come back to us, Chris, and when she gets more completed
Yes.
on
Yeah,
it?
our current plan is to work on this throughout the month and then submit some updates at the next meeting.
Okay.
We'll also talk about it at the the Community Development Committee coming.
That's a Monday.
Yes.
So
No, Tuesday. Usually on Monday, we're closed on
Monday,
Juneteenth.
the 19th already. This month has flown by. Okay. So item number 8 on the agenda, zoning text amendment discussion, continuation, expansion of uses in Zone AE Hatch floodway special flood hazard areas.
Yes, I'm going to turn briefly. As you know, we've had a landowner in Rockbridge County that most of the land is located in the floodway. There a significant amount of existing structures, but the desire is to have a wedding event venue associated with the area. With that being said, as reviewed, there are certain permitted uses and uses by special exception in the agricultural zone. As you know, a use by special exception is a wedding event venue in the agricultural zone. However, you have a flood overlay district, which goes on top of it, and that has certain uses and permitted uses and uses by special exception. The floodway district is the most restrictive zoning, most restrictive floods category we have in the county, and it's that's like that throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. With that being said, I'd like to turn the floor over to Mr. Neil Whitmore, that has done a significant amount of research on other localities, what they do, similarities and differences between us. Would you like me to do the PowerPoint?
So we started this discussion back in April, and the commission had directed staff to look at adjoining localities to see what they did as part of their ordinances and uses in the floodway. And so we looked at our 7 adjoiners, including Albemarle County as well. We tried to look at those that have similar topography, watershed use, and that type of thing. So we looked at the adjoiners there. And all the surrounding localities are participants in the National Flood Insurance Program and adhere to FEMA guidelines and firm data. So in many cases, the management that they use for their floodplain districts is very similar to Rockbridge County, with a few deviations, but not a great number. So looking at Rockbridge County Land Development Regulations, the chapter is 608 Flood Hazard District there, and it defines at that point the floodplain districts, and which it's interesting because it's defined by FEMA as, and I guess the back of it, this is looking at the Zone AE Hatch, which is the area of the floodway where engineered studies have been conducted. And so those areas are defined as having at least a 1% chance of experiencing a flood each year. And then another way that FEMA looks at it is the 100-year floodplain is defined as flooding that has a 26% chance of occurring during a 30-year period. It is a regulatory standard used by federal agencies to administer floodplain management and is the basis for flood insurance programs across America. And what they do is they base it on, it's a 26-year period because that is the usual period of a mortgage. And that is how FEMA looks at it over kind of a 30-year period. So looking at Rockbridge County's uses, there of course are permitted uses. And the way these span is very similar in adjoining localities, which many agriculture uses are permitted by right within the district. Things such as general farming, pasture grazing, outdoor plant nurseries, forestry, wild crop harvesting. And then moving on, there are both public and private recreational uses. And this spans pretty similar across the localities. Things such as parks, day camps, golf courses, hiking, nature preserves, game and fish, trap and skeet ranges, hunting areas, things of that type. So those are permitted by right within the district, and that is fairly similar. Then moving on to those that are permitted by special exception, there are some localities that they require everything to be done under special exception. Augusta is one. They have no by right uses in the floodway. Everything comes before essentially review before the commission for any type of use. Other adjoining localities, including Albemarle, Botetourt, Nelson, do it much like Rockbridge. For example, here, and I think one that we've kind of honed in on are the temporary uses. In a Rockbridge case, circuses, carnivals, and similar activities, and that's pretty general across the localities as far as what is allowed by special exception. Of course, there are things such as water activities, docks, marinas, airstrips are allowed, but aircraft parking is not. And so you could land an aircraft, but of course you can't park it there. You cannot store fuel or anything of that type there. Anything with buoyancy or hazardous material properties, you cannot store or have on the property. And then within this presentation are a few more specific activities for each county. You'll see up there also that in Rockbridge, there's approximately 3,000 acres in the zone AE hatched. So that would be 3,000 acres that is somewhat a part of this discussion here, if you will. The one common theme throughout all the localities and throughout all the ordinances is that none of the uses can require structures that are to be inhabited. That is either as a primary or accessory structure. They are not designed for human habitation. That is a pretty much across the board common theme there. I noticed as Chris and I were looking at this, he had brought up that Botetourt County diverges just a little bit and would have a little bit more leeway within. It is still by special exception. No adjoining localities expand their by right use to a great extent. It is all within pretty much that. For by right, it is within the agricultural use, limited recreational use, no structure for habitation, and then within the special exception area, a few expanded uses, but it's pretty limited.
Seems reasonable.
I kept looking for something to pop out that was way out of the ordinary that we could kind of explore or dissect a little bit, but it's really not there. It's pretty uniform.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Dealing with a flood plain or a flood zone. Really watch what we're allowing to occur and somebody wants to build or a structure being built in.
Right.
It's, we all know how flood water can come up here pretty quick, depending on what storm decides to settle in and dump on us.
Out by those logs that we approved.
Oh, yeah.
Supposed to have the boulders and.
Yeah.
Need to be.
We just got to watch for it.
Mhm. Okay, is that,
Well, we sort of need some direction from the planning commission. If y'all, obviously, the existing, the parcel, the bird in hand, if you will, has existing facilities on it, which is somewhat unusual for the floodway because just that it's the floodway and that facilities usually don't stay there during flooding events. With that being said, we sort of need or we do need some direction of how y'all would like to proceed. Would you like to modify the ordinance to allow this type of use in the floodway, or would you like to just not at this time type thing?
to allow what use?
A wedding event venue is.
Oh, that's what we're talking about. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. I mean, they're not living there. I mean, that's a partial time, right? I mean, it's not a house that somebody's gonna be living in. It would be just like if you had a carnival or something, you're gonna have people come in for a period of time and then leave. If we're flooding, people have the option to get out. I mean, that's the main thing I'm thinking about too. I don't know what your thinking is.
No, right there with you.
Any thought one way or the other? I mean,
Right.
we've allowed campgrounds
Right.
and just as long as they give notice and have a warning system in place and all those kinds of things.
So forgive me, is this something specific to, I mean, I heard you say,
To a wedding event venue.
yeah, but so this is what boils down to, one person is wanting a wedding event in the flood.
Yes, I mean, generally, it's not uncommon for zoning text amendments to be propelled forward by one particular project. We have at least one other one on the agenda tonight type thing. And obviously it would be the same for all landowners with floodway on their property. So you to answer your question directly, yes, is being propelled forward by one property that has the desire of holding wedding event venues or holding weddings, receptions, reunions on their property. I looked at the current ordinance. Again, of course, in the agricultural zone, we have a path forward, but then you throw on the use by special exceptions. And there are several use by special exceptions that are allowed as Mr. Whitmore reviewed. But in my opinion, it does not extend to special event venues.
So what's the negative of saying no? I mean, and what's the positive of, now, if we say yes, if we get 10 more of these, so what? I mean, well, the one that we're talking about now, there are existing structures
Absolutely,
in
yes.
place that they would want to take and probably renovate, more than likely to reuse.
I would say so, yes.
When we start, that's a path that I don't know if we want to go down or not, where you're taking renovating buildings that are set in the floodplain that have potential washing downstream. I mean, that's where we're at.
I mean, but I mean, to me, that who cares? Like if they want to spend their money and then it, I mean, we're not talking about dangerous, chemicals and things like that.
If we're going to do that, you're going to have to put in, and you're going to go and allow this, we're going to have some verbiage in there, in my mind, where it's temporary facilities.
Yeah, I mean, that is what an event
For-
venue is.
but
There's
for-
no staying on site, like you can't rent the cabins
Right,
out
but I
while
mean,
you're
it's
there
still-
for a wedding.
It's a permanent building, though. We're going to have something in it where it's a temporary building, a tent or whatever it is, where you're going to have a wedding venue. You're going to set up a tent. You're going to have a wedding alongside the stream, blah, blah, blah. It comes down, it's gone. This guy's got facilities already in place. And I guess since if he wants to spend his money, that's fine. But I don't think we need to allow it, even by special exception, where somebody can go in and start building buildings alongside of it.
Isn't
Side
that up
the
to the
river.
building department to decide if they're going to give them a permit to build in the floodway?
It's a special exception. now.
Right.
There's no, so you cannot build dwellings in the floodway. And the reason is it's not only, it not only endangers, there's multiple reasons, but backing up a little bit, it's not only, obviously, when it floods, those buildings do not stay on the property. We learned that over and over. Those buildings can go downstream. They can damage other people's properties. They can block up bridges. Isabel in 2003 or early 2000s was a prime example of South River as far as temporary buildings blocking bridges.
Basically, you could say, we're going to allow wedding venue in the floodway, but we're not going to allow new buildings to be constructed. I mean, in this situation, the guy's already got buildings on there, so if they're swept down the river.
To me, if he revitalized the structure, it would probably make it a little more foundational sound. So it wouldn't, I mean, I guess water's gonna move a building irregardless, but
So to be clear, we have existing provisions in the zoning ordinance that have to deal with the value of the value. It says market value, and then how it relates to the proposed improvements. And it's a below 50% threshold and above 50%
Above
threshold.
50%, you'd have to start all over, and we don't want him to do that.
And 50%, it has to be in full compliance with the statewide uniform building code. I think it is. So
That is
We talk about
something-
remodeling the existing, right?
absolutely, yes. Yeah.
That's something that's pretty uniform
Right.
across, was the value of improvements that were made to any existing structure. Some localities put dates on it. I don't know, I don't really know that that's a feasible thing to do. But the uniform language was the amount of improvements based on the market value. And then anything, the one constant through everything that was pretty much non-negotiable was anything that increases flood height or water velocity is strictly prohibited across the board.
So what does Augusta do? Everything's a special exception.
Everything comes up before their planning commission. And I think one thing they do is they require some pretty extensive engineering hydrologic studies. Other localities do as well, but I think theirs, it comes into play more frequently because they don't have any by right uses. Or would it appear so just reading their language?
My feeling is then you ought to just leave it as a special exception. You have to bring it, that way we can look at each property individually, what's on the property, what are they looking to do, rather than just give a flat, you can have a venue in the floodway.
So when you say venue, someone could have a structure outside of any of the flood zones, and then they would have their ceremony down in the floodway. They couldn't have could they have an arbor? I mean, what are we talking about? I mean, obviously they couldn't build a new building, but could they have the ceremony right against the river's edge and with a permanent arbor or platform deck, whatever you, so I'm just trying to get a sense of what the.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And so I think the main question is what uses do y'all want to encourage, if you will, in the floodway? And so the existing ones, bear with me here.
Don't get me wrong. I certainly don't have a problem with having weddings in the flood. But taking buildings and reworking buildings, the existing buildings to make them, you're saying make them stronger and stand up. Well, we're going to, then you're going to end up crossing the threshold that he's talking about as far as 50% of value of buildings, you're going to have to do improvements to get it there. And how much, I know that everything washes downstream and you end up having issues because of what shape. We don't want to. I feel like we need to get into it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my take on that would be by the time someone pays their insurance for that facility, I mean, I don't know that it's a good business move per se, but that's not for me to.
Well, and my opinion is, what are we going to do with the floodway land? Is it just going to be worthless and we can't do anything
Yeah,
with
because
it?
I mean,
So no, there's certain uses that, I mean, it's
Right,
uniform
yeah,
across
that
the board of what
farming
you can do in the floodway.
you know, if we're talking South River, right? The beautiful, you know, I don't know, I'm sure everyone's been on South River Road. It's beautiful through there. Got mountain views and the one bugaboo is it's South River and everything feeds right into that river and it floods. And I'm only thinking, man, what a neat idea to kind of rejuvenate some of that area, because it's pretty sad now if you ride down through there. It's you know, to where it used to be anyways. However, you know, I do agree with you. I mean, it's gonna flow
You gotta watch-
downstream.
You
It's
gotta
just,
watch what you're putting up, is what I'm saying.
yeah.
So are you of the opinion that we need to leave it as is, and if they want to do something like that in the floodway, they bring it before the board and get a special exception?
I mean, to me, that's the way to go with it, because you
Instead of
said,
just giving a blank check?
you
I
said it
agree.
yourself. Each property and everything has its own unique.
Right.
Each stream, each floodway is different in terms of flash flood potential or
I
expected.
like the idea of also asking for more engineering, because I feel like we've passed a few things through here that I wish we'd had more.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back.
The engineering hydraulic studies come into place when structures, it's not
Okay.
uses. It would not be uses because no use, well, it would be structures that would
Figure that.
exactly change the characteristics of the hydraulic pattern.
I mean, I don't think there's so few of these requests in floodways. I wouldn't think it would, unduly burden the county or us in terms of hearing them specifically.
1 every 5 years.
Right now, the permitted uses, agricultural, general farming
Yeah.
is permitted. Pasture, grazing, outdoor plant nurseries, horticulture, truck farming, forestry, sod farming, and wild crop harvesting. Private and public recreational uses such as parks, day camps, picnic grounds, golf courses, boat launching, swimming areas, nature preserves, game fish, hatcheries, trap and skeet ranges are permitted.
And you're saying that Augusta County, everything, all that.
They review it all.
They review it all.
From what their language states, they review it all.
That's county, more going on. That's crazy.
It sounds to me like we want to leave it as is.
I can live with that.
Well, to be clear, as is does not have a path forward for special events in the floodway.
But we need to draft language to something to say that if they want to have that, they need to bring a special exception, that we will allow it by special exception.
That is the context of this discussion. Yes, ma'am.
So, is that what we want? Okay. Sounds like we would like to draft language to say that if you want to have a special event venue, that you need to get a special exception if it is in the floodway.
So we would need a motion to instruct staff to take, I think it's,
But no action required, so I didn't know we were doing.
You just, I think you just made a motion, didn't you?
well, there is no action required. And I think
Okay.
all the next ones, there's not required action.
Okay.
If you would like to take action to instruct staff
Right.
to
Gotcha.
proceed with it, I think we have enough for staff
We
to
should.
make modifications to 608 period 11-2 to allow for special event venues, special events in the floodway by special exception.
And I guess would this be under that temporary uses category?
This would be under 608 period 11-2, permitted uses by special exception.
No thing.
Is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah. Permanent structures.
Yeah.
Anything that's put up has to be taken down within 24 hours, that kind of crap, or 48 hours. We have to have some.
Were you saying there's another one that's like,
Well,
by, like I mean, 'cause it
Circuses
wouldn't
and
be on-
carnivals
Uh-huh.
are in there as temporary, kind of
Okay.
like what Mr. Lewis talked about.
Wouldn't really be
Effort would
temporary.
A good one on that one probably, because that's probably in the floodplain. They go out there and at the firehouse, and they set up, everything up there for.
This wouldn't make sense to go under there because this would be the only use that they would be using that property for. It wouldn't be farmland and then the next week be. a
No,
venue.
it would be. I mean, yeah, it would be very common for it to be farmland. And I mean, most floodway is going to be farmland. So I think you would anticipate it would.
Would be considered like a carnival and be a short term.
I don't consider, so that's exactly the section it would go in. So it would, again, 608.11-2 uses, permitted uses by special exception. It has 1 through 7 in there. Number 5 is temporary uses such as circuses and carnivals. So I would go right under that. And number 5 or new number 6 would be special events
Okay.
as defined. Because in my opinion, the temporary uses such as circuses and carnivals are not the same as temporary uses of a special event. And that has to do with the duration of the event, how many times they do it, a whole lot of different things. And so
Okay.
we had, staff had some questions, question and answers and some, devil's advocate, if you will, on how it would work and how it would. And funny enough, the gentleman that we've been working with reached out and said, hey, I think he had a comical response or, weddings can be circuses. Could this be considered, under a similar activity? And the answer was no, and that's appeal. If requested, I obviously would make a zoning determination letter and that would be appealable.
Right.
But really the nature of the conversation is what uses do we want to see in the floodway and common uses of the floodway, very common uses now are agricultural activities.
Okay.
And so you obviously could see probably parking lots would be one of them that would be anticipated because they could not have structures. So to back up a little bit, going through deal 608.11-1 are permitted uses in the floodway. farming, public and private recreational, accessory residential uses, and accessory industrial uses. The section we're talking about and have been talking about, 608.11-2, are uses by special exception. And then it goes to say structures except for manufactured homes, accessory to the use and activities in subsection 1. So you can do a barn by special exception. You could do, if any of the campgrounds that we've talked about included improvements, which one did, and they weren't doing it at the time because they would have to come back through to do a floodway. But it would not allow any structures associated with non-agricultural, private recreational uses or accessory residential uses.
Okay.
And then it goes on to say utilities, public infrastructures, water-related activities, temporary uses such as carnivals, storage of materials, provided they're not buoyant, other similar uses and activities with cause no flood increase in velocity.
So if I, let me just make sure I understand this right. So if I'm a chicken farmer and I want to build agriculture, yeah, I'm gonna build 2 big chicken houses.
No, sir.
No, you
The
can't.
livestock
Okay.
confinement facilities are prohibited in the floodway period.
Okay.
But didn't
Now,
we
if that's
decide-
what your level you're talking
Right,
about.
yeah, I just want
Okay,
to make
but-
sure that,
but CFA, or CFA, I can't remember what we had, CAFA, right? And when we talked about it before, that's like 22,000 chickens in each house, but you could have 1,000 chickens and be in the floodway, right? Because it's agricultural use and it's not a CAFA.
You could do a barn in the agricultural zoning district. Yes.
So that would be allowed.
yeah, I guess I'm just trying to play
So-
devil's advocate,
You're
make sure that
you're thinking Whipple.
I see it every day.
You're thinking,
Which
you're thinking Whipple.
You could not
Whipple down
do
along
that
the river.
size.
Yeah.
You could, that facility
size.
is prohibited in the floodplain period. 100-year floodplain period.
Okay.
You know, and that obviously what we're talking about, the floodway is engineered study and essentially it's velocity. You have velocity coming down the water where an engineer has stated that if you build it, I mean, that again, it's uncommon to have structures in the floodway because there's structures in the
Gonna go
floodway.
away, right? So what we're looking for is a motion to amend 608.11-2 and add a number 6, right?
Or
To
add
allow-
the ability for wedding event venue, for special events in the floodway
Floodway.
as a use by special exception.
Okay. Who wants to make a motion here? I am not allowed to because I'm the chair. I'm trying to,
Whatever she says.
yeah, what,
Second,
um,
There you
Okay.
go.
that's not legal, is
no,
it?
what she said, that's my motion. I did. I did. You want me to say it again?
Yeah.
Of course.
Right,
That's right.
I did.
Wait, what? If he, can he repeat it and then I'll make a motion?
It would be a motion to amend, to instruct staff to take to public hearing, to advertise to public hearing, modifications to section 608.11-2 of the land development regulations to provide for special events as a use permitted by special exception.
I make that motion.
And do we have a
Second
second?
motion.
We have a second and all in favor?
Uh,
Aye. So we're
You love it,
instructing
don't you,
staff to advertise a public hearing to amend 608.11. Okay, wow, that was more than I thought that was gonna be. So now we are on to the zoning text amendment defining and providing for accessory dwelling units, garage apartments, and guest homes.
Yes, and so in front of you, let me pull up a screen here. Nick had done some research on accessory dwelling units, what other localities are doing. So I also have to say that this one was essentially propelled forward by staff, if you will. Of course, I got Mrs. Hennis' permission to put it on the agenda last month, and we started looking at other localities. But since that time, since last month and this month, this has probably come up 10 times. I mean, 5-10 times minimum. And that's probably a low count on people calling and saying, hey, what accommodations do you have for accessory dwelling units? What accommodations do you have for garage/apartments? That type of thing. So with that being said, I'm going to bear with me here for a second. I'm going to pull this up on the screen so I can share it with the public.
Yeah, I have a question about the way this one's written because it says you're required to meet this and then it says, but if you don't, then we're going to call it an accessory. So
Don't know where the second one is. Bear with me, sorry. I got the next discussion on a PDF. I don't have this one, so let's see. I don't know what happened to this one, but I'm gonna pull it up in a Word document and we're gonna do it that way, I guess. I'd like to turn the floor over to Nick at this time.
you're on.
Trial by fire.
I can't find what I'm looking for. Nick, you're up. All right, so, sorry, here it is. All right, sorry about that. Took longer than it was not saved where I thought it was saved prior to the meeting. So we did not get as far as accessory dwelling units. With that being said, we have existing section of the ordinance 702 that allows for additional dwelling on a single lot. The large issue, the issue has been when you're getting garage / apartments, we currently treat them as dwellings. We used to, under the predecessor, we used to treat them as accessory structures, essentially exactly what this does. And in my opinion, that could be problematic for several different ways. So if you wanted to do a second dwelling on your property, 702.01-2 states that the arrangement of such dwelling is in a manner that no lot, in a manner so that if the lot or parcel of land is ever subdivided, no substandard lots are created in terms of area setback and requirements for that district. So that means, let's say you're in an agricultural zoning district and you have 3.5 acres, you call and say, I want to add a second dwelling on my property. We say, no, you can't do it. You would have to have 4 acres of land. Then if they have 4 acres of land, you could do that second dwelling. However, because you have the area, however, you would have to be able to subdivide that property in terms of setbacks as well. So that's a minimum. If you're talking about a side yard setback, it'd be 50 feet from the existing property, house, then you go 50 feet for your side yard setback, then another 50 feet for your side yard setback, and then this proposed house. So in between the houses, it could be a garage / apartment, you would need 100 feet total. And so that has been problematic. So the proposed, what is in red is obviously proposed, and it states that a garage, the language that we've come up with is the garage apartment / dwelling are required to meet the area setback and exterior setback requirements as a primary dwelling for the underlying district. I'm gonna read it once and I'd like to go over and review it each sentence by sentence. Garage apartments that do not meet the setback requirements between the existing dwelling and the garage apartment / dwelling may be considered an accessory structure. Only one garage apartment dwelling shall be located on a single parcel. So backing up and breaking that down essentially sentence by sentence, the first sentence would still require the same amount of land and the exterior setbacks to be the same. Obviously, accessory structures have different setbacks than the primary structure, and some accessory structures can go 5 feet away from the side and rear property line. And so if you're talking about an inhabitable dwelling, if you will, and you're 5 feet away from property line, that could be problematic. In reality, if it's over 15 feet tall, the accessory structure has to be 20 feet away. So most, if not all of these are going to be 20 feet. So that would require the minimum acreage that we talked about and that all exterior setbacks are met. Number 2, the second sentence, garage / apartments that do not meet the setback requirements between the existing dwelling and the garage / apartment may be considered an accessory structure. So what that does is what the citizens are looking for. It gives them the flexibility to do a garage / apartment that's not 100 feet away from the primary structure. The exterior setbacks would have to be met, and the the acreage would have to be met. Then the last sentence, only one garage/apartment dwelling, garage apartment/dwelling shall be located on a single parcel of land. We allow for multiples, and this came up years ago. We allow for multiple accessory structures. You can have 10 accessory structures on your property if you have the room and, you know, have the room to meet the setbacks. So with this one, this would prohibit 10 garage/apartments.
The second sentence, there's something about that, so it says garage apartments that do not meet the setback requirements. The one before it says garage apartment dwellings are required to meet these setback requirements. But now you're saying if they don't meet them, after we just said they were required, now they're an accessory structure. But it says they may be considered an accessory structure. Shouldn't it say they would be considered an accessory structure at that point?
So your first one, the setbacks between again, the exterior setbacks is clear that it would have to be met 50 feet for exterior setbacks, regardless of primary dwelling or a garage/apartment. It would have to be 50 feet. And then the internal setbacks would be the setback requirements between the existing dwelling and the garage apartment. Does that part make sense?
Right. It didn't make sense to me that we were saying you're required to meet the setback, but then the next sentence says, but if you don't, we're now going to say it's an accessory dwelling.
The first sentence specifies exterior setbacks.
Exterior setbacks, but then it says the garage apartments that do not meet the setback requirements. Is that not also referring to the exterior setback requirement?
That would be the interior.
Okay. So this is interior. And they may be considered an accessory structure. They aren't definitely considered. What are they if they're not? Might be.
It could be considered a dwelling. I mean, I mean that it could be a shall and shall be considered an accessory structure. And then there's just no wiggle room for interpretation.
Yeah. Okay. I just thought that it just seemed a little.
If somebody adds like a 2-car garage attached to their house,
that becomes part of the primary dwelling.
okay, then what if they put apartments above that?
We don't allow for duplexes in the agricultural zoning district. However, we do allow for in-law suite, if you will. The difference, and it's been an interesting experience going through the other localities, because the way we have always interpreted the difference between a duplex and an in-law suite is means of ingress egress, and that's exactly how others do it throughout the Commonwealth. But meaning that a bona fide duplex, and there's also building code between a duplex and a mother-in-law suite as well. But a bona fide duplex would have an exterior door and an only exterior door. It's designed and occupied by two single family dwellings, or two families, I should say, versus an in-law suite that you provide access to the front door and you still can get to this in-law suite. I'm not saying that it would prohibit exterior ingress and egress, but it would require the same front door that you access the entire property. So that one, depending on the layout, and it does get unique depending on the layout and how it's accessed and how that garage is
Right. You got a garage
attached.
You got a garage that somebody's built. They've attached it to their home with a breezeway. They put an apartment over top of it with an exterior entrance.
That probably would be permissible. I think that would be permissible.
I know where there's one sitting at now, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Well, I have one at my house because when we had extra kids, we had to have bedrooms for them. So we put them up there and we never like closed it in. So they had to go exterior steps up, but there's no kitchen and stuff in it. You know, it's just 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. So it's totally separate.
That's what they were asking.
Okay.
So would a barn dominium kind of fall in this as well?
No, barnuminium is just a single family dwelling. I mean,
The only reason I bring it up is say you buy an old farmhouse and there's a barn.
That's our next one. Tell you the truth, I really wanted to, and that does come up. That does come up often.
I guess I'm just.
Yeah, and that
Kill
would
two
be
birds with one stone.
Yeah, and I really wanted to. I mean, there's a lot of great definitions of accessory dwelling units out there. There's a lot of great definitions of guest homes, and that is our goal. I still want to do that, but this has come up.
Gotcha.
We will still continue to work on that, and you know, staff has had a lot of conversations on accessory dwelling units. And you would still want that flexibility essentially with the internal setbacks, because that has come up over and over of, okay, well, this is a barn, but it's not 100 feet away from the house.
Mhm.
What can I do with it? Well, you can't turn it into, you can't convert it to a dwelling because of the requirement of there's no flexibility between the 100 feet. Let's put it that way. This would only provide for the flexibility that some are looking for a bona fide garage / apartment. And so drum roll, what is a bona fide garage / apartment? That would be a proposed definition that would come under approximately 302.91, that a structure above a private garage containing one dwelling unit, which we obviously define a dwelling unit, provided that the square footage of the garage / apartment is less than that of the primary dwelling. And I think, we did see a lot of localities that limited to 800 square feet. We saw some localities that had no limit on it. And I think it, working with smaller localities, or I'm sorry, smaller lots, the 800 square feet would make sense. However, I think in my opinion, the planner had, if you will, I think there's some correlation between the size of accessory structure and the dwelling unit and the size of the original house of the dwelling unit.
I think other than the fact that I want it to say shall be considered an accessory structure, I think that's a good good addition there.
So I also think it'd be beneficial, sentence number 2, garage / apartment that do not meet the internal setback
That
requirements
would be clear.
between the existing dwelling and the garage / apartment shall be considered.
Yeah, that would make it
yeah.
much clearer.
No, I agree.
Okay.
Any gray areas?
So are we okay with this, or we need to make motions on this?
If, again, no action is required, but if y'all would like to propel this forward, a motion would be similar to the last one, to instruct staff to take the proposed zoning text amendments as discussed with modifications to public hearing next month.
Okay.
So move.
Second.
Okay.
Is that good enough? Or do we?
That
do it?
is.
Okay.
Very good.
deal. All right. And the last one is the zoning text amendment discussion, defining and providing for train depot, train station in the general industrial I-1 zoning district.
Yes, and I have this. This is the only one I could find last time, so I don't have to scramble as much. So we have a landowner in the Goshen area that has been working towards essentially a tourist oriented train station depot. And when I say tourist and oriented, it would be an older locomotive that gives joy rides, if you will, tourist rides. It would be going from one proposal, I should say, is going from from Goshen to Stanton, turning around or somehow, and then going back to Goshen. So it's a very similar operation in Cass, West Virginia, I believe. And it's generally speaking, citizens in the area, tourists that would like to just go enjoy a train ride for the afternoon. And so it's not uncommon to have train tracks in the industrial zoning district. As you know, we can go over where we have train tracks, and industrial zoning district. But essentially going back to what's propelling this forward, it's not uncommon that one particular use or one particular proposal, especially with somewhat antiquated ordinance we have, it propels these forward. So in front of y'all, you have the existing 607 general industrial zoning district, has the statement of intent. It goes through the permitted uses. And when they came to Rockbridge County, if you will, to the zoning department and said, hey, this is the idea, the very first thing I look at, and there are a lot of moving parts that still need to come together for this particular project to come to fruition, if you will. The very first thing I look at is the zoning ordinance. What do we have? What ordinance do we have? And how does it fit or does it not fit? Again, just like the first zoning text amendment that we looked at, I looked at the zoning ordinance and I could not see a path forward of anything that related to a train station. And so what we have proposed, obviously, there's a lot of heavy uses in industrial zoning district that are permitted by right, rightfully so. It's an industrial zoning district. It's that's where our most intensive manufacturing production, that type of thing goes on. So you have existing, and I'm not going to read them all, just go through some of them. Boat buildings, permitted use, sawmills and planing mills, brick manufacturings, truck stops, truck terminals, and truck relay stations, slaughterhouses, wood yards. And so what we're proposing, or what is being presented, I should say, in front of y'all is amendment to the land development regulations associated with industrial zoning district, all industrial zoning districts with rail access. And it'd be 607.02-25. And it'd be a train station and or a train depot, meaning that it could be a standalone train station and a train depot, or it could be a standalone, either one could be standalone as well. Then you go into permitted uses by special exception, and there are some more intensive uses by special exception, if you will. So that's the only zoning text amendment that is in the actual industrial zoning district, is just to add these two as permitted uses, if y'all see fit to take it to public hearing.
So in this,
And then, go ahead, sorry.
well, so in this one, basically, we're just looking to, again, take it to a public hearing to make an amendment to the industrial zoning to add train station and or train depot as permitted use.
Yes. However, in order to do that, you obviously have to define both of them.
Right.
And so at the end of the document, 302.26217A would be a train station, and then B would be a train depot. Excuse me. A train station could be defined as a railway facility or area where trains stop to unload and load passengers or freight, and may include ticket office, restaurant, luggage check-in facilities, and similar uses. A train depot would be a place where locomotives and or train cars are housed when not in use, and or repairs and maintenance occur. So if y'all are comfortable with taking this to public hearing, we would need a motion to instruct staff to take this to public hearing.
Okay.
The proposed zoning changes associated with 607 and assorted definitions.
Make a motion for staff. Take it to public hearing.
Sounds like
We have a
Robert seconds it.
All in favor? Aye. You just get to the end of the night. All righty. Last thing is an update from the Community Development Committee.
Yes. So as discussed earlier, we are planning to meet. We usually meet on the third Monday of the month, with the third Monday of the month being a holiday of Juneteenth. We are planning on meeting on the 20th. Not much to report from last month because we did not hold a meeting. I think Mr. Watkins was out of town, and then Mr. Kramer said, "Hey, I'm gonna be out of town." And so I reached out to other members of the Planning Commission, but prior to reaching out to all of y'all, one of the supervisors that sits on the Community Development Committee called me and said, "Hey, I'm gonna be out of town." So we were gonna be, twiddling thumbs with maybe one, maybe two people. With that being said, we just said, okay, let's just cancel this month's meeting and let's just shoot for the next month's meeting. So the next month, next Tuesday, we'll have a Community Development Committee meeting.
Do you all have like an agenda? Who comes up with the agenda? What do you talk about?
Well, we talk about, essentially, we have a very common agenda going forward. We talk about the Planning Commission actions, what's coming up to the Board of Supervisors, because it is in between the two meetings. So we'll go over what y'all talked about. It's a good idea. It's a good opportunity for just a somewhat of an informal discussion on what y'all did and what's coming up. We go over the Planning Commission. The original idea of this was to get more input on from both bodies, if you will, on the comprehensive plan. And so we talk about what chapter we're going to, we're talking about what chapter we're going towards. And then we also talk about zoning text amendments. So those are, to answer your question directly, it's usually Planning Commission actions, could include Board of Supervisors actions, proposed zoning text amendments that need to be done, comprehensive plan. And I think that's going to be,
I'll let everybody talk about everything.
yes, I think those are going to be the three common themes that we talk about in the foreseeable future. Hopefully we are still,
It's not big picture stuff, really. I mean,
it could get there, but the first meeting was like 2.5 hours, and it's usually a 2-hour meeting or something like that. We allocate 2 hours usually. And so again, I do foresee those three topics being the majority of the discussion here in the foreseeable future, but definitely as we get past the comprehensive plan, and our goal is to get it done this year, this calendar year. But when we get past the planning, when we get past that, we certainly could talk about short-term and long-term planning goals.
Okay. So we need a motion to adjourn.
I got one thing.
Okay.
Mr. Rao brought up a comment, or mentioned something about the Brownsburg Museum being in
Out
a
of compliance.
Yes.
residential zone, on a lot residentially zoned. And you were going to do some digging into that.
So yeah, I'm able to confirm, we have two sets of old zoning maps in the office community development. One is extremely old. I think it's the original zoning maps. It's on I can't remember the date of the quad map. It's not 1983, but it's actually the quad maps that were before 83. Because there's some slight variations. I can't remember what year that was. But anyway, I was able to confirm on the oldest zoning maps that I have my hands on that the essentially the east side of Brownsburg Turnpike 252 has been zoned residential since the conception of zoning. I have not had an opportunity to really dig into when the museum went in. I'm very confident, just based on some passing conversations, that it was not there in 1972 or before, that it was actually more recently, maybe the early 90s. If that's the case, it would be I don't even know if it'd be a legal non-conforming use. It would just be, I'm not sure how to, if they wanted to, they would be prohibited for any expansion of use or expansion of use or expansion of the physical footprint. It certainly would be considered non-conforming. I can't tell you if it's legal non-conforming or illegal non-conforming at this time. But I think that was part of, I have had follow-up conversations with representatives from the Brownsburg Community Association, and their path forward would be a rezoning, and staff would probably recommend a conditional rezoning to business. Whether, how we get there and when we get there, I'm uncertain.
Well, that was brought up, and I know that probably fell within when it was actually formed and when it was actually placed on the property, when they turned it into a museum. I guess.
Yes.
So as far as whether it be conforming, non-conforming, or
Seems like they should bring it to get it rezoned if it's in a residential.
And I
you
think that's,
determine
I think that's some, of course, I met with, via phone call, met with Ms. Cosgriff, president of the Brownsburg Community Association. And we're following up on that sometime next week, I think it is this community meeting via Zoom. And I think we did have some discussions on how it got there, path forwards, that type of thing. And it's not uncommon. I mean, I'm not saying that we have a lot of this going on, but obviously zoning was initiated in Rockbridge County in 1972, but it was not addressed as formally as we do it now until the early 90s. And so I'm not sure where this particular case falls in between the two. But I'm certainly encouraging, I certainly would encourage further conversations with the landowner, and then is certainly happy to facilitate the process of moving forward.
that's what I don't have a problem with rezoning it, but I just think it might be in their interest.
It may
Move
behoove
forward.
all parties to,
Forward with-
yes.
with-
Well, especially when you're making, I mean, it was two different folks making comments against Mr. Rao trying to do the right thing. I mean, he's taking the proper steps, and, Brownsburg, the community association, the museum technically shouldn't be there. And another neighbor is, basically having horses and everything else on the front yard of their residential.
Most if not all of that activities in an agricultural zoning district, because
Not on this property.
Yeah, that's what they were talking about.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I guess it. I want to
the
say
large
it is
majority of the
residential.
Shingleton property is zoned agricultural.
Correct, but
Yes.
but it's different plots, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so the plot where they actually have the horses on like the front yard and nothing on the other.
Okay, so yeah, no, we.
Anyway, I guess,
Don't throw rocks on the lid of a glass house.
yeah, I mean, and you know, here's the thing, just go about it the right way. You know, if it's, you want the museum there, which is fine, I think it's awesome. Just, you know,
Good with it. Yeah.
just do it, you know.
Get 'em
So
way
again,
that-
I'm not 100% feet under me on the history of it when it went in, but I could certainly continue the conversation. And we do have a path forward of a conditional rezoning. I would recommend as staff, I would recommend proffers, same as we did with the Rose. Sometimes we do make that recommendation, sometimes we don't. But in this particular case, I think it'd be appropriate to limit to a single family dwelling and or a museum, you know, as far as the uses that it could be.
And not an expansion. Is
Well,
that what you were saying? No expanding the.
that's under the existing one. So they do not have the ability, if they came in for a building permit and said, we want to expand this, we would require a rezoning. We do not have the authority. If they came in for expansion of use, saying we want to start doing this activity, or we want to expand our hours from here to here, they would not have the authority. We would not have the authority to allow that happen either.
Okay.
Make a motion to adjourn.
And we have several seconds, so we are now adjourned.